This is TWIS. This Week in Science, episode number 847, recorded on Wednesday, October 20th, 2021. How to monkey around with science. Hey everyone, I'm Dr. Kiki, and tonight on the show, we are going to fill your head with blood, ducks, and lady brains. But first, thanks to our amazing Patreon sponsors for their generous support of TWIS. You can become a part of the Patreon community at patreon.com/thisweekinscience.
Disclaimer, disclaimer, disclaimer. When wondering about why things are the way they are, keep this littlest of thoughts in mind. Everything runs on knowledge of the past. The way roads are built, the way school is taught, the way laws are created and enforced, the way governments are run, the way doctors diagnose, the way food is prepared, the way a computer is programmed, the way engineers engineer anything is all based on past knowledge. Occasionally, there are humans who do find themselves confronted with the unknown, with a set of circumstances, problems, or obstacles that they have absolutely no past knowledge with which to guide them. These are ignorant people, best to be avoided because they are markedly prone to making poor choices. If they just spend a little more time educating themselves and a little less time unknowingly getting by on other people's knowledge, they would see that no matter what confronts them, humans have found some sound strategies and solutions in the past. And nowhere is this knowledge of the past applied better than right here on This Week in Science, coming up next.
I've got the kind of mind that can't get enough. I wanna learn everything. I wanna fill it all up with new discoveries that happen every day of the week. There's only one place to go to find the knowledge you seek. I wanna know what's happening. What's happening? What's happening this week in science? What's happening? What's happening? What's happening this week in science?
Good science to you, Kiki.
And a good science to you too, Justin and Natalia.
Yes! I'm so happy to be here.
Welcome to the show.
We are excited to have Natalia Reagan joining us for our show tonight.
I'm ready to monkey around.
With
Can't
the science. Yeah. Well, everyone, thank you for joining us for another episode of This Week in Science. We've been looking at the news, checking out all the science, visiting all the science farms, pulling out the good science carrots. We're all going to munch on them tonight. Chomp, chomp, chomp. This is not a monkey analogy. I don't know. I mix my metaphors
More of a
constantly.
rabbit thing going on there with the
Yeah.
carrot munching.
I had a rabbit for years who refused to eat carrots. I think it's a whole
you know what?
sham.
It probably is. It's probably mythology.
Yeah, I think it's just, it's the carrot industry just really trying to, cash in.
Yeah. Next, they're going to tell us we should feed carrots to our cats. Oh, they could. Okay, we have stories for you. We have sciencey stories. I have a bunch of science news. I've got some green energy, not in the way that you might be thinking, though. I've also got my ducks in a row, and I have those lady brains. Lovely, lovely lady brains. That's what we're gonna be
You love
talking
my
about
lumps,
tonight.
my lovely lady brain lumps. And
Exactly.
bumps. Yeah, that's what Fergie was talking
so
about.
convoluted and wonderful. So good. Justin, what did you bring for the show tonight?
Let's see. I've got the kind of wood that you could drive a nail with. Something blood does with DNA. Why being a Christian nationalist is bad for your health. And just good news.
Just more, just good news. I can't wait for that good news. Yeah, gonna be great. Oh, and this would normally be when I would ask Blair to tell me about her stories. But you know what? You know what Blair Whitten did this last weekend?
No.
She got herself remarried. Well,
What?
she finally celebrated her wedding to her partner, and the two of them are off on a fabulous honeymoon for the week. And so we tonight are being joined, like I said, by Natalia Reagan. For those who do not know you, Tell us a bit about yourself.
I'm a primatologist. I'm not Blair, first of all.
Nope.
My apologies to those who are big fans of Blair. Congrats to her. I'm a primatologist, but I'm also a comedian. So I actually was an actor and did comedy before I became a scientist and studied spider monkeys. And then when I was finishing up grad school, I kind of combined the two, and I make science comedy and have for over a decade now. So I've hosted a Bigfoot show, done videos on boobs, butts, balls, and Bigfoot. You know, the big bees.
Yeah.
Yeah. No. And I'm a big believer in, especially as a social scientist, getting science out there, because I think we have like kind of an ethical responsibility to talk about what we know to hopefully make the world a little bit better, a little bit more tolerant, a little bit, more bearable in this time of uncertainty.
Yeah, and I'm actually sorry that show got canceled, because from I understand, after you did the B words, you were going to go and do an episode of C words, but the censors caught up with you on that one.
Well, the censor being my mom.
Are you sure you should be saying that, honey?
Yeah.
All right. Sorry, Mom.
Oops, my bad.
Ah!
Yeah, no,
well, welcome to the show for the night. I'm so excited to talk science with you. Gonna be fun. Let's be more than bearable. Let's be fun.
Oh, yes. No, I've got costume changes. So, if you want to include stuff, I don't have any ducks, but I do have a rubber chicken.
That'll have to stand
always.
In. Yes.
Always, Andy.
Where's my rubber chicken?
Well, as we jump into the show right now, I just want to remind you all that if you have not yet subscribed to This Week in Science, you can find us all places that podcasts are found. You can also find us on YouTube and Facebook and Twitch. We are at TWIS Science, TWISCIENCE, on Twitter, Instagram, and Twitch. And everywhere else, just look for us as This Week in Science. You can also visit our website, twis.org. Okay, time for the science. Let's dig in. Boo, boo, boo. We are just about living in the future, everyone. This week, surgeons reported the first successful transplantation of a kidney from a genetically modified pig into a human being.
Ah.
Yeah. Now,
wow. I no longer have to sell kidneys to do things, because that's usually my go-to joke. Like, oh, give me a second. I'll be right back. I'm going to go sell a kidney.
Right. So,
damn it, the pigs are taking me out of the game.
If you still have a kidney to sell, then you still might have time to do that. This is not something that's going to be, at your local grocer shop. Exactly.
Yes.
We are going to be waiting a while for this to really start becoming available. This is a proof of concept. It was a single kidney in a single human being. This is not yet published research. It is just a report by the surgeons, reported by USA Today and the AP and other places, not scientifically minded. I just need to add, what they've done is taken the kidney from, as I said, a genetically modified pig. This pig has been modified so that it doesn't produce a certain sugar that our human body does not produce. Pigs do produce one different sugar that causes a lot of rejection issues. And so they've gotten rid of that problem by CRISPRing the pigs. And there are probably lots of CRISPR pig jokes. But the kidney then, along with other alterations, it's made it safer so that it doesn't have also ancient viruses in the pig DNA that could potentially pop out and cause disease in a human recipient of such an organ. They did not transplant this kidney into someone who was really able to give their permission. It was a person who was about to be taken off of life support by their family, and the family agreed to allow their family member to be used for this purpose, to receive the pig kidney before they actually took the patient off of life support. Now, in this, they watched for 2 days, and over the course of 2 days only, there was absolutely no rejection. The kidney appeared to be working well, and everything went swimmingly. All markers were good. So there's a lot more work that needs to be done, but this is the first human transplantation. And I had thought that we had transplanted pig organs a long time ago. But we really haven't.
We've been doing livers, haven't we? The human livers grown in pigs, I thought was the
Right, but that's
been
grown in pigs, and then
but
there's
not transplanted in.
no, and yeah, so I went looking at this idea of cross-species transplantation and found an article from 2012 that's a brief history of cross-species organ transplantation. And I discovered that this is a long and it has a long and sordid history, starting back in the 17th centuries with ideas going back to the Greeks, ancient Greeks with ideas
much too soon to start that. Yeah, yeah, a lot of groundwork needs to be
blood
done.
transfusions from animal species were carried out in the 17th and 20th centuries. They never went very well because of the graft versus host issue and the problem of the blood typing not working.
But if somebody told me, what you need, son, is you need some horse blood in your veins.
No, I don't.
That's what you need. I'm like, yeah, that sounds like a great idea, you know? But little did we know that back then, well, I guess they figured it out probably pretty quick.
People died fairly quickly when this happens. There was a point in the 1920s when a Russian researcher named Voronov, he advocated the transplantation of slices of chimpanzee testes into aged men whose quote unquote zest for life was deteriorating.
Okay, then.
This was a thought that the hormones that are produced by the testes would rejuvenate the aging testes.
Yeah, the problem, as I recall with that one, is that it while it worked, it made those men incredibly attracted to chimpanzee females. Which is only an issue if they went to the zoo.
Faces off of other men, just in general.
Yeah, in the 60s, a researcher named Riemtsma transplanted chimpanzee kidneys into 13 patients, and one of them was able to return to work for almost 9 months before suddenly dying. So,
you got 9 months closer to retirement that way.
The first heart transplant was in 1964 with a chimpanzee heart, and you're right about that person died within 2 hours. And then you're right, Justin, that the chimpanzee to human liver transplants.
That's chimpanzee, though. I thought it was pig. I got to stop toasting the pig livers. Because I thought that was going to save me one day.
But pigs are the big hope. Because we farm pigs, we can use them, these genetically modified pigs that have been authorized for food and medical use.
So, food and, they make better bacon. They make better bacon. I know. I just see
the Twilight Zone
so
episode.
Much better.
What Twilight episode?
Remember the Twilight Zone, the Eye of the Beholder? Yep, I see a little bit of the remember the end with the pig? No.
Yeah, they all had the pig snout people. Yeah.
A little side effect. Who knows? But I find it fascinating. Episode. I have a father who only has one kidney, so you know what? I think he'd actually be happy to be part pig. You're like an instant babe at that point, right? Like that's like
exactly.
You're babe.
I get to be Babe the pig.
Not my dad's a babe, but he's got. Never mind.
That'll do, pig. That'll do. Pig.
Exactly. That'll do.
Well, anyway, hopefully these transplants will pick up some steam and make their way to humans around us to save lives, and not just for kidneys, but for other organs to help humans with our organ shortage, because people need new organs. We're not good at taking care of ourselves yet. But moving on from transplants, you wanted to talk about knives and nails, Justin?
Oh, yeah. Okay. So there was the Stone Age, long time ago. Stone Age. Then there was, after the Stone Age, you had the Bronze Age, the Iron Age. There was the Industrial Steel Age. But often overlooked in history is the mighty contribution of the Age of Wood. While some might think wood has always been around when we needed it, some researchers recently reimagined how hard wood could actually get. And the results are pretty impressive. The method, presented in the journal Matter, makes wood 23 times harder than it's ever been before. So then the question is, what do you do when you've got really, really hard wood? You drive a nail with it.
Of course you do.
That's
immediately
the thing.
First thing that crossed my mind.
Yeah, so actually they did a few things. They made a knife that was nearly 3 times sharper than stainless steel dinner table knives. The knife, according to the researcher, the knife cuts through a medium well-done steak easily with similar performance to a dinner table knife. Says Teng Li, that's the senior author of the study, material scientist at University of Maryland. And the other one they did was, and to be, also they can wash it. You can wash this knife afterwards. It can be reused many, many times. So they're thinking this is an alternative, not just to steel knives, but maybe to things like plastic disposable knives or things that aren't going to break down over time. They also demonstrated, and there's a video to go with this, although it's long and not very impressive. The team also demonstrated that their material can be used to produce wooden nails that are as sharp as conventional steel nails. So they say as sharp as. So there's so we got the video up of the cutting the meat with the wood knife. And there's another one that's below there that should show them putting the nail through like 3 pieces of wood. Now, I have a feeling that there's something about the brittleness of it still that's not quite the same as steel, because they're driving a nail like, you know, when you tap on a nail to get it sort of in there just a little bit before you can drive it through. This is like an 8-minute video of them tapping one nail all the way through. Takes a long time, but it's still.
And little did you know that these are like IKEA boards that they're tapping through.
It could be a softwood, but it's still a wooden nail. I mean, we invented dowels, but you got to drill it first. So they could just, like, there's things that you can do instead of this already, but it's still a kind of a cool proof of concept for this. Some of the other things they're thinking about doing with these, with this wood technology, they're thinking about making more scratch resistant, wear resistant flooring. Also, those nails, the nail that is getting tapped in there has an added benefit that the nail will not rust because it's made out of wood.
But if it's made out of wood, it won't rust, but will it deteriorate? So they're looking at this, at the wooden knives as a possible replacement for plastic cutlery. But on the other hand, the nails would do better than regular nails. I am finding this
so what you
confusing.
What you have to add up, though, is that the wooden nail, if you were, for instance, building a house with wooden nails instead of steel ones, the idea would be that it would deteriorate the same rate as the rest of the wood around it. Maybe a little bit slower. So the way that they
house would fall apart at the same time.
Which it's going to anyway.
Is the wood is it treated with like a resin, or is it
So it is treated with a mineral oil, and it didn't specify what I was reading, didn't specify what. But we use a mineral oil, some types, like on cutting boards and that sort of thing, to preserve the life, to make them last a little longer. So that was just for the longevity thing. But the process they used is different. So usually when we're making wood things, we have a compression and steam thing that is reshaping or forming the wood to make it stronger. What they did here is a little different. So cellulose is the main component of wood, which turns out has a higher ratio of strength to density than most engineered materials. So more than ceramic, more than many of the metals, polymers. But wood that we use ourselves is also only 40 to 50% cellulose, has a bunch of binding materials. So what Lee and his team did is they created a process that removes the weaker components while not destroying the cellulose skeleton. So then they've drained out all the lignin. So you got this lignin-less wood. You know, it's a little soft, flexible. It gets a little squishy. And then they do a hot press. They apply a bunch of pressure and heat, and they remove any of the water or anything else that can be left behind. And then they carve the shape of the thing. And then they coat it with the mineral oil to extend its lifetime. And at the end of that, they've got this super strong wood that can last a really long time.
Interesting.
I just think of termites and just how happy they're going to be as we make this switch.
Right? Maybe they're going to be like, my little termite teeth don't work on this anymore.
They're going to cut they'll adapt and evolve. But that's really awesome. In terms of it being an alternative to plastic, I mean, that's a great idea, but we're already trying to cut down on, I guess, deforestation. Are they talking about using like sort of recycled wood, scrap wood, things like that?
That wasn't part of this discussion at all, but yeah, whatever material humans use is going to destroy the planet so far. So until we can just, so I don't, so we'll have less trees and we'll use less of the trees. When we make this wood,
we're going to use trees to cut down trees. Help a tree.
Maybe, we'll use wooden saws to cut down the trees in the future.
Oh, the betrayal. Oh, that's sick.
Sick. Oh. Yeah, we'll actually be using half as much of the wood than we would have been using before of the lumber that we cut when we use this process. However, we'll be using less heat to produce it because it creates less heat in the molding of this than it would to create a metal or a plastic. Right. So we're saving the energy, but we're still seem to be spending out of the same overall account. At the end of the
I feel
day.
like this is like when Waze takes you on a journey, like you're going to save 5 minutes and then you end up adding 10 minutes to the journey because
everybody else got the same message. Because everybody else got the same message.
Really a good choice? That's right. I don't know.
We want to save you 2 minutes.
That's exactly why I ignore that every time.
Let's move from your green nails and knives to a little bit of green energy. Ooh. Have you ever wondered if you could be powered by the sun?
Aren't we?
I mean,
pretty much when it comes down to it.
We consume food that is.
There is that aspect, yes, of being powered by the sun. Plants are powered by the sun. We eat the plants, and so indirectly, yes, we're powered by the sun. But what if the sun could get through our skin, and what if we could photosynthesize and power ourselves directly through photosynthesis? Some researchers just published in iScience, an open access journal, on their method to give little oxygen-deprived tadpoles more oxygen by injecting photosynthetic algae into them. They injected these tadpoles with photosynthetic algae. They put them into a oxygen-deprived water bath, and then they illuminated the skin and the tops of the tadpoles, and they found that oxygen levels were refreshed within the brains of these little tadpoles.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So my first reaction though really was I wonder how many other just off the wall bizarre experiments these people did and the creatures died. But then I realized there was probably past knowledge that they were working with.
Well, one of the researcher, the first author, says you have to have new ideas and new concepts to explore. This is one of the ways science is driven. If you are open-minded and think it through, all of a sudden you can see all the possibilities from one idea. They envision this research benefiting laboratories that work with isolated tissues or organoids that, as the organoids grow, need to get oxygen, that potentially these oxygen-producing algae through photosynthesis could help the tissues survive and allow research to be better. And that could potentially lead to fewer animals needed for research, which is something that is, a lot of people would like. Could we use fewer animals for the research that we do? And if we can find ways to get the organoids to work or other lab tissues to thrive and survive like this, let's see if we can do it. They're not going to be injecting photosynthetic algae into people anytime soon because your immune system is not going to like that very much. So don't try this at home, kids. No, don't do that. But yeah, they can apply the algae into the tadpole's heart. The algae spread through the tadpoles and they were able to see a benefit. Happy tadpoles.
Wow. That's really cool.
Wow.
Yeah, this is an interesting direction of research. Let's photosynthesize ourselves. Okay, so from green blood to regular blood, Justin?
Yeah, this is actually research that's revealing what regular blood already does. Something I guess that we just didn't know it did. New research has revealed that red blood cells function as immune sensors and can bind free cell DNA, which is also known as nucleic acid, present in the body's circulation during sepsis and even in COVID-19 cases. So this DNA binding capability triggers their removal then from circulation, which then can drive inflammation and anemia during severe illness. There's this thing, I guess, that they talk about, which is people who get sepsis, which is, what is sepsis exactly? It's like a throughout the body type of an infection.
Yeah.
You get an infection, but then you get
throughout the blood.
Throughout the blood. It's moved around through the blood, so now the infection is kind of everywhere. All right. So they've seen that with this, and I guess malaria and some other things, when they've given people treatment, they end up with anemia. But they haven't had a really good explanation for it. And it turns out what's happening is the blood is grabbing these little bits of DNA that have broken free from this infection, and they're kind of cleaning it up. They're like cleaning it up, but they're also saying, hey, you might want to look out for this. This is going to be a problem later, letting the whole body and the immune system know that this is present. But then, if there's enough of an accumulation, so this is then like in a malaria or a sepsis or something where the infection's gotten really, really bad, it begins to deform the blood cells, which then gets them taken out because they're no longer looking like red blood cells anymore. So then the body needs to get those out of circulation. And that's where the anemia kicks in, because now you have this reduced red blood cell count. So one of those things that they had seen the correlation between disease and anemia, and now they have discovered the mechanism, which is always, I love when a mechanism is discovered. That always feels like it's the hard science thing, whatever it is. Here's how that's taking place. The correlations are always great observation. Now what?
Yeah.
But now we have a mechanism. We know that red blood cells are running around doing work we didn't know that they were doing.
That's also interesting for those that maybe already, because I know for years I had severe, extreme anemia is what my doctor called it, which is always fun when they use words like extreme in a health issue. And
really, thanks.
Thanks. Hey, okay.
You could have just said anemia. No, couldn't have. That wouldn't have.
Actually, I haven't thought about this in a while. I had a really bad staph infection. I got hit by a truck many years ago as a pedestrian. Yeah, I'm fine now, mostly. But I had a really bad, I had a vancomycin resistant staph infection on the lower part of my leg. I had my leg was basically filleted open. And so, but I wonder if maybe because they could, nothing worked. Nothing worked. And it was spreading and they were really worried. And I mean, it wasn't sepsis yet, but I remember them not realizing or not understanding why nothing was working. And I just wonder if the anemia was possibly, made worse by the infection. Who knows?
It's not often we get a testimonial during a story. So that's fantastic. Like that could, and it's one of those, we just didn't know how the one was affecting the other.
Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, red blood cells, we usually just think of them as the oxygen carriers. They're the ones with the hemoglobin. They're just carrying oxygen around the body. They're going to go pick it up in the lungs and they're going to take it where it's needed. And then they're going to, make their little trips. It's the white blood cells that we think of as the immune cells. And so what's interesting to me is this is a different job for the red blood cells, that everybody's involved in cleaning things up. That if a red blood cell is walking by a piece of trash, the red blood cell is going to pick up that piece of trash. And then the red blood cell has to be taken to the dump. But anyway.
Yeah.
The
body is amazing.
It's amazing. So fascinating. Oh, I have one fun story before we keep moving on.
I like
what
fun.
is it? Yeah, I have a fun. It's really a very sweet study. I mean, I love it when physics answers a question that people have asked so many times. When you're looking at a little arboretum with a lake and there are the ducks on it and the spring and the little cute little baby ducks are mecking all around after their mom. They're not like mecking in a random way around their mom, they end up in a straight line. Their mom's like, let's go over here to look for food. And all the little ducks line up in a row. Why do all the little ducks line up in a row? Well,
Why,
because
Kiki?
it makes it easier for them. It's energy, because these researchers who just published in the Journal of Fluid Dynamics, they have discovered a couple of properties where the wake of the ducks affects the way that the ducks are able to swim. So they're basically wave riding. And
Are they moving that fast?
there's enough of it.
I mean,
yeah, they ride little waves, and they also, there's wave passing and wave riding. And so back to about the third duckling after the mother duck, they are basically being pushed by the wake, that their energy input is, they don't have to work, really. The wake is pushing them. And then beyond that point, it starts to go down and down and down and down. And the little duckling at the end is the one that has to kick the hardest.
Look for that third duck.
I'm going to keep trying.
That third duck is either the most clever one or just the laziest one.
Those little mother duckers.
Or maybe both.
So the next time that you are out looking at ducks and appreciating them swimming around in their little formations and going, oh, wait, I know this. This is energy conservation. These little ducklings are lazy. These little lazy ducklings are just getting a free ride here. Really, that's what they're working on.
I just imagine them, when you hold on to, if you're on a skateboard, you just hold on to a car and it's just like a little row of them.
Yes.
Now I want to put ducks on skateboards. I probably should be stopped. Somebody please stop me.
Well, let's see the video you produce first, and then we can comment.
Then we'll decide.
It sounds like that's something for the comment section.
Let's go viral first.
Thought about. Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
That's too fun. It's just ducky.
I'm all about that. I can't. I'm a big fan of waterfowl. It's a thing.
Because they're so foul.
Party fowls. Foul play. You name it. It's not just for the birds, after all. It's for us. It's for science.
It's all for the puns,
right? Oh my God, yes. You better believe it. Mm-hmm. Yeah, they don't call me the Punisher for nothing.
Oh. The rest of the show will be nothing but puns.
Sorry.
This is This Week in Science. I do hope that everyone is enjoying the show, having as much pun as we are. If you are having a great time, hey, remember, you can share it with a friend. Don't keep it secret. Tell somebody today. Also, we have calendars. So head over to TWIS.org and click on the link to purchase your 2022 TWIS Blair's Animal Corner calendar. Keep up with all the sciencey holidays. We got to let you know when things are going on. Support TWIS as well. All right, coming back for a little COVID update. You ready for some COVID news? That was well timed.
Very well.
In vaccine news, this is actually good news for those of you who have been wondering whether or not you should get a booster if you had gotten the Moderna or Johnson & Johnson vaccines. The FDA, as of today, has authorized all 3 vaccines that are in use in the United States, Pfizer's, Moderna's, and Johnson & Johnson's, for boosters. So go ahead and get your booster if it is time for you to do so. And, if you're like, oh, well, I had the Pfizer, but maybe I want the Johnson & Johnson, or you go to the pharmacy and they're like, well, this is all I have. And we've had the question of whether or not we can mix and match our vaccines. The FDA is saying, go ahead. Treat it like that candy bag that you buy for discount prices at your local discount candy bag store.
And while you're at it, sell all of your Johnson & Johnson stock, because nobody's going to go back for the third one or second one of those.
So let me tell you, though, the Johnson & Johnson, the second booster, boosts it up to the effectiveness of Pfizer and Moderna.
So now you're at like having a second shot.
Yes, and
I mean,
unlike Pfizer and Moderna, it appears that Johnson & Johnson only increases in effectiveness over time. People 6 to 8 months after receiving their primary Johnson & Johnson shot do continue to have elevated levels of antibodies and T cells, which is very important for mobilizing a good response. So, Johnson & Johnson, just getting your second Johnson & Johnson, that'll be fine. Otherwise, Moderna's doing great, Pfizer's doing great. The issue is, get vaccinated. That is the big one at play because, vaccines keep people out of hospitals.
Yeah. I did have a discussion. A good friend of mine is an ER doc, and I will. Please. She had preliminary, preliminary write up. So I'm not a doctor. I'm not going to pretend to be one. I just play one on TV. But basically, she was one of the initial findings of this one report was that in combining an mRNA vaccine with more traditional Johnson & Johnson could actually be beneficial. But I don't want to say that as fact. But it's something I think to look at in the future.
I think we had something about that on here too, because they address different, slightly differently.
Yeah. How to get your immune system to pew pew.
But I didn't get a booster. I didn't get a booster, but I got a third dose, full dose of the Moderna, which was because I just got it last week before they approved the half dose. And I was just like trying to figure it out because it was like before the FDA, they're like, will we approve? Well, they won't. They approve it. It's the half dose. I'm like, oh, okay. But my doctor's like, yeah, go ahead and get the third dose instead of the booster, which is a full dose, which it makes me wonder why they had to consider whether or not you could get the half dose as a booster if there was anyway. So the stuff got approved. That's great.
That's good. It's approved. They just want peoples to stay healthy.
Yes. Right? And someone just mentioned that the J&J has it's the chimpanzee adenovirus is the delivery system in the Johnson & Johnson, which is pretty neat that we can utilize our closest genetic relatives to kind of help us out to combat something like COVID because they're at risk as well. So
there was something recently related to gorillas.
San Diego Zoo, I believe, had a while ago. This is because I remember at the time I had a friend who was trying to create a rapid test, but it was a rapid PCR test back at the beginning of the year when rapid PCR didn't really exist. It was just kind of like PCR or, the rapid ones that had a lot of false positives. Because a lot of zookeepers, I was talking to friends of mine, I work in the film industry in New York and LA, and a lot of my friends were getting tested every day in the film industry, but zookeepers working with some of the most endangered animals in the world were not getting tested unless they had symptoms. And that you're more contagious when you're asymptomatic. So as somebody who loves animals and obviously is a primatologist, I'm like, no, how do we stop this? Because zoonosis, the transition of diseases between different species is such a big problem. They had it with, Ebola and gorillas in the 70s. They had a bad outbreak. So, what's to say that COVID can't? It's not, obviously Ebola's mortality rate is a lot higher than COVID, but still. Anyways, down from my soapbox, girl. Down.
Well, but there's, there's
soapbox. Let's
get vaccinated, please.
But there's more.
We should have more testing, and this is something that this is an issue in schools. This is an issue in the zoos. It's an issue. We should be testing more. On to another story, however, published this week in Science Translational Medicine. Researchers have discovered that people who are pregnant who catch COVID-19 their immune systems respond differently depending on whether or not they're pregnant with a female or a male child.
What?
This one, I had the same reaction when I started reading about it.
Damn.
Male placentas produce more pro-inflammatory genes and proteins than female placentas. Those with male sons produce fewer antibodies following infection as well. And they pass fewer protective antibodies on to male fetuses. which is very interesting because we've seen over the last several years that there are differences in the way that hormones, estrogen, testosterone, interact with and influence the immune system, our inflammatory response. And so it's just fascinating that the stages of pregnancy and the sex of the baby that increases certain circulating hormones can have an influence on the health of the mother as well. And so researchers are interested in how they can use this information moving forward. A researcher who was part of the study says what the downstream effects are going to be for the child, we still don't know. And it's definitely going to be important to follow up the development of these children on the basis of sex, because we see these really profound changes in the placenta that suggest the intrauterine environment is suddenly altered, even in the setting of mild maternal disease.
Oh,
yeah. So, yeah.
COVID's a
Get vaccinated.
So much. Get vaccinated. I know. Yeah. Well, that was what killed me when it was like herd immunity. Let's just like let it rip through the United States and just see what happens. And I was like, no, we don't know the long-term sequelae. Like we don't know what the effects are going to be.
That
Just
and the math on it was so bad.
Mm-hmm.
Like as many as deaths as we've had to this point, which is more deaths than Americans have encountered in all of the soldiers who we have lost to wars combined, of all of them, starting back at the beginning, the civil, the world ones, all of them, we've lost more people to COVID.
Up. Yeah.
The number was almost for the herd immunity would require us to do that like 14 times over.
We don't need to do that. We don't need to do that. Yeah.
No, we don't. But the thing is, it just didn't make sense.
Not to mention we don't know what the long-term effects of it, in terms of like any sort of the heart damage. Things
I didn't bring a study that was showing that there's a possible link between having gotten it, recovered from it, whatever, and neurodegenerative disease increases because it's too soon. This is the kind of thing we want to look back at 50 years from now and go, well, I'll be dead. But the people who are still alive 50 years from now will look back on and go, oh yeah, okay, I see what the effects were.
Yeah.
But right now we're living in this time. We don't need to know all the downsides.
Yeah. Last quote from the study from this article out of The Scientist. The data of interest, this is Ruth Karen, a virologist and pediatric infectious diseases professor at Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health, not involved in the study. The data is of interest, but I think it doesn't at this time have practical implications in terms of vaccine rollout other than what we already know, which is that 97% of pregnant people who have been hospitalized with COVID in this country are unvaccinated. So,
God, that's that.
And that's
these
numbers
are lying.
And I really feel for the people who were pregnant and didn't get vaccinated. Because
for a while everyone was afraid because they weren't sure how the vaccines were going to affect people.
Will be.
They needed the research to come out, but now we have the research and we have the information and we know that the vaccines are safer than catching COVID.
When you start being hypersensitive to what you're ingesting because it's going to be part of the formulation of a human being. And so the pressure to decide whether or not to get vaccinated on something that the research you don't know or the officials aren't confirming or backing or science isn't backing up is terrifying. So I feel really badly for these women who this 97% of unvaccinated pregnant people in the emergency rooms or what have you, because even with the information they had at hand, that's a tough call.
It is a tough call. But if you need information about COVID vaccines or other COVID related issues, I urge you to check out the CDC's website. They have many answers to these questions. And if you have questions for us, we have some answers, and maybe we can find information that we don't necessarily have answers for yet, or let you know, hey, nobody knows that. So let us know if you have questions. This is This Week in Science. We're done talking about COVID. It's time to do a lot more fun stuff. But first, I do want to tell you that if you really love this show, please consider heading over to TWIS.org and clicking on the Patreon link that is there at our website. It'll take you to our Patreon community where you will be able to choose a level of support in an ongoing fashion. You'll be charged monthly. You can pick your level, whether it's $3.14 a month or $10 a month or more. $10 a month and more, we will thank you by name at the end of the show. You do get little gifts in return for your support. And, also just our undying gratitude, because you really are what keeps this show going. You help us do this every single week. Thank you for your support. We really can't do this without you. And now, I want to come on back and I want to ask Natalia some questions.
Do you want me to put on a hat? Should I put on a squid hat?
You could wear a squid hat.
Do you want a Charles Darwin in a bathrobe puppet? I mean, what would you like?
Will you be able to do a Charles Darwin in a bathroom ventriloquist act? Puppet show?
I was doing a show a long time ago, and I needed a Charles Darwin puppet, and I realized that if you buy the Noah puppet from Amazon and you just get a little wee bowler hat to put on him, he looks like
suddenly it's Charles
Noah
Darwin
in a bathrobe with sandals. Oh, his sandal fell off. Hold on.
So now he's barefoot. Apart. Barefoot Darwin. I hear he has bad feet anyway.
And it's very likely, after seeing all of the animals come marching in 2 by 2, Noah probably did go, you know what? You know what's interesting? I just kind of noticed that they all seem to be pretty well adapted to their environment in very specific ways. Yeah,
This whole natural selection thing. I mean, maybe Noah was the OG natural selection.
So how did you get into spider monkeys? Speaking of animals that are adapted to a particular niche and and all those things.
Well, I started out, it's a good question. I started out wanting to study gorillas like so many people do. And I still very much I have a gorilla costume at my heels right now because every primatologist at least has to have 2. But I wanted to study Grauer's gorillas, which were a subspecies of gorilla after I kind of discovered their plight. They live only in the Democratic Republic of Congo and were heavily affected by the tech boom in the early 2000s because a lot of people were going in and mining coltan, this heat-resistant mineral. And 80% of the world's coltan is found in Africa and 80% in DRC. And so basically the Grauer's gorillas habitat was being destroyed. And then when the boom busted, people were turning to bushmeat or other, forms of perhaps killing these gorillas. And I fell in love and also wanted desperately to help. But when I was about to go do that or do some work there in 2008, it was no longer safe for me to do so. So I pivoted and I met a primatologist named Dr. Christina Campbell who studied spider monkeys. And I pivoted and went to spider monkeys. And I was able to do conservation in Panama with a critically endangered subspecies called the Azuero spider monkey. And they are the most beautiful beasts ever, very charismatic. They have a prehensile tail, meaning a tail that can manipulate like a fifth arm. A lot of people think that all monkeys have those, but it's very rare.
Wait, that's but isn't that, I thought that was just that's like a New World monkey.
It is.
The only ones that have this, right? Like that's the difference. Like the old world monkeys. What's the old world?
Circopithecus it's so funny because we're trying to move away from old world and new world. In terms of
it's a very weird term. Yeah.
It's tough though, because we're like Platyrrhines and Circopithecus, which is a big
nobody knows.
Yeah. But that doesn't roll off the tongue.
Not quite
East
like
World, West World? Can that just be the thing? Because that works.
Exactly.
That kind of makes sense.
That kind of does, yeah. But then why east, west, why what? Yeah, I guess, yeah. I mean, if we're gonna just go with that's what we call it, then yes. I just say like the monkeys of the Americas.
There we go.
But spider monkeys live in southern Mexico into South America, multiple species, but only a few species have that tail. It's howler monkeys, spider monkeys, capuchins, woolly monkeys, marikis have these sort of prehensile tails that can manipulate and be used like a fifth arm. And spider monkeys also lack a baculum, which is the penis bone, which most non-human primates have. Spider monkeys do not have a baculum.
Wait,
maybe you don't got back.
do I just not know? Okay, I'm just gonna show my ignorance.
No, it's okay. I mean, I didn't know until I became a primatologist.
Like I didn't know that about. Okay, so monkey. What about apes? I'm just gonna ask you.
Yeah.
Different mammal penis structures.
Well, no. So actually, my friend, she's also
ape
a
versus
primatologist.
monkey, though.
Dr. Michelle Bazanson has a great acronym. It's PRIC. It's primates, insectivores, chiroptera,
primates,
which
rodents?
are the bats. No,
the bats.
No. Yeah, it's bats. So yeah, I know primates. Is it insectivores? Am I missing one? I'm missing one. But a lot of mammals do have a penis bone, a baculum. Walruses have a very large os penis. They call it an os penis. It can be up to 18 inches long. Most of all the great apes have them except for humans. I don't like to speak for everyone. By the way, the plural term for baculum is bacula. So when I do presentations, I always like have a picture of Scott Bakula with like a line like, no, don't get too excited. Not Scott Bakula. But yeah, it basically
don't make that mental quantum leap.
Yay! See,
so wait, like
Dr. Kiki and I are friends. Yeah.
So wait, now I'm like really curious because I want to know like how come we don't have a baculum and all the other great apes do.
Why don't we have one, Dad?
Yeah.
So one of the thoughts is that the lack of baculum. First of all, I just want to say congratulations, male humans out there. You have the largest penis to body size of the primates. I just want to give a slow clap.
Oh, we did it!
Good job. You did it.
We did it!
When it comes to the cojones, I'm sorry. No, chimpanzees have you mad beat. They've got some massive huevos, testicles for days. But there's the idea that possibly being able to achieve and maintain an erection could be a sign of health and virility. It could be attractive to the opposite sex when trying to meet the ladies. So that is one of the ideas that it's a sign of health that if a guy can keep it up, champ, then that can help. So but it does make it easy too. I mean, like for the non-human primates, the first time I ever did field work with spider monkeys, I saw 3 copulations. It was basically a spider monkey threesome, 3 copulations in one day, and it was 1 male with 2 females. Also to note, and you might lose your mind when I tell you this, spider monkeys also have what is called a hypertrophied clitoris, which is a very long pseudopenis that dangles from the lady's undercarriage. It looks like a fleshy lady finger. It's great for researchers when they want to determine the difference between males and females, because the males and females are very similar in size. And so from a distance, it's like, oh, what is that? And then all you have to do is like look through your binoculars. If you see a dangler, you're like, oh, it's a female.
Female.
Yeah. And that's how, for me, for instance, like when I first met a spider monkey, I was at Monkey Jungle, and I think I did a movie called Sex Drive in 2008 where I played a pregnant prisoner, random side note, but I went to Monkey Jungle because we were shooting not too far from there, and the handler there let me actually feed spider monkeys, which I wouldn't advise, but at the time I thought it was really cool. And I saw a female and I was like, look at that dude. And he was like, nope, that's actually a female. So, yeah. And it's not 100% sure why they have that either. But, I mean, we see pseudo penis throughout, the animal kingdom. Hyenas have them. Yeah. Capuchin monkeys have something similar, but not like a spider monkey. I mean, a spider monkey is like, damn. It's
interesting because with hyenas, the females, I mean, they have this really interesting dominance hierarchy, their social structure. There's a lot of stuff going on.
Don't
which
they
makes
also
me wonder
have
about
some sort of weird sync?
Makes me wonder about the spider monkeys and their social hierarchy.
It's not as so. It's not they're social. So they live in these fission fusion groups where it's basically the beginning of the day. Think of it as like beginning of the day, they have a large group in a sleeping tree usually. It varies with how many, depending on, what area you're in, deforestation, human encroachment, blah, blah, blah. But they start off in a bigger group and then they fission off into smaller groups, usually to mitigate any sort of resource competition. Like, you don't want to compete with the big males. So when I was doing field work, I work in an area that has a lot of deforestation. So I saw a lot of females by themselves with their infant, and that was it. So there's not the same kind of hierarchy that you would see like with hyenas and things like that, or even like baboon females, I remember years ago I did a D News episode about, it was the Toronto Zoo where they had like the battle of the baboon females because one alpha died and there were two jockeying for position, where they have kind of a more set social hierarchy. Spider monkeys are not quite like that. Yeah, I mean, it is fascinating. But also, and I talk about this a lot. I teach biological anthropology, and one of the things I always talk about is the environment. And as you both know, plays such a huge role in behavior that we see behavioral differences, and which many can call culture, in different areas because of the access to resources or lack of access. So, who knows? I mean, some of them might get real territorial with their hypertrophied clitoris. But hyenas, one note, they actually give birth through their clitoris, which is also like, that's not okay. That is not, that is mean. And I don't like it.
That's why hyenas are so angry and aggressive, I think.
They laugh out of discomfort. They're nervous.
Exactly.
Maybe it's cry laughing.
It is all the time. Oh my God. So you've moved on from the monkeys. You're teaching biological anthropology. You are doing acting, and I've seen you on Twitter recently posting that you're trying to get some shows made.
Oh, yeah. So it's funny enough, I pitch television shows, science comedy shows, and one of the shows I developed over a year ago, it was Mel Brooks is my hero, has been since I was a little girl. I have all sorts of Mel Brooks like memorabilia and stuff that my boyfriend's like, let's not put that on the wall quite yet. But I'm like, please, I want to. But I came up with an idea called The Uncensored History of the World with Mel and Nat, because I feel like, history of the world was such a huge part of my life. And I feel like the History Channel has done such a great disservice to the world at large when they talk about, who created the pyramids. I'm not saying it was aliens, but it was aliens. We need to get past
every accomplishment of non-white people throughout all of history had to be aliens because they were too dumb to have done anything. Is basically the take-home message from ancient aliens. In a nutshell, there it is.
It's anything that was somebody who does not look like me, who is not a white European male, pretty much, it must have been an alien. How many aliens are out there going, God, we didn't do that. Stop.
Okay. So, and then there's always fun stuff like, but what gets left out is like, actually 65% of the produce that humans eat was developed over thousands of years in the Americas. It was a long, drawn-out process of cultivating this piece of grass until it became an ear of corn that took thousands of years.
Potatoes in Peru, in the mountainous region, they took these poisonous tubers.
Tomatoes weren't even edible things. They were little weird berries. And then like so much of math and so much of everything else. The Europeans only been there a very short time historically compared to the burgeoning of information that was happening on this planet. And then to say, oh yeah, no, it was all aliens because they couldn't have come up with it. You didn't come up with anything! European, by you, I mean all of us Europeans sitting here. But you didn't come up with everything! Hey, you just used it right at the very end. A bunch of stuff. And then claiming it. But it's,
No.
Anyway, I totally agree with you on that one.
Yeah, no, I mean, that was kind of
what were you talking about?
Show. Oh, no, it's not. Well, no, it's a show that I basically came up with that I've been pitching, and then just to kind of, the idea was almost like Charlie's Angel, where Neil, that's my old boss. Mel would like basically come on and basically, in a hot tub or at Froman's Deli or getting a massage and be like, "Yo, Natalia, I heard some putts on the History Channel say that aliens built the pyramids. Like, what gives? And then it's like, don't worry, I'll Sphinx this once and for all. And then it's like going to the country, working with the people actually in the country, doing some drunk history like bits, because I'm a big fan of drunk history and I have the comedy background. But what happened was a couple days ago, it came out that, and it's awesome because it's a great idea and it's freaking fabulous. And it's like one of those things where I'm both excited, flattered that someone else, or not flattered, but more like excited that someone else came up with the same or very similar idea. But Nick Kroll is doing History of the World Part 2 with Mel. And so I was like, I saw that
time coming,
right? 40 years we waited, but so now I'm trying to get on that, try to help out if they need a science correspondent, a history, buff expert, comedy, because I wrote comedy for Neil deGrasse Tyson. Like, hey, whatever, if you need me, I'm here. Don't
Natalia Reagan, one of the reasons that Neil deGrasse Tyson has been funny.
Yay! Hire a Shiksa. I'm right here.
Yeah. So if anyone out there knows Mel Brooks or anyone close to him,
or Wanda Sykes or Nick Kroll or was it Ike Barinholtz? There's a list of wonderful people. Happen. Yes, I would love to just I'll bring you coffee and tell you dumb science jokes, but I pitched
and then some awesome science facts too.
Yeah. Just you want to know about the hypertrophied clitoris of a spider monkey? Holler at a girl. I'm right here. You know where to find me.
That would be good.
But so just hopefully I'm back in LA. So hoping to produce some more live stage stuff so we can have more science comedy, fun stuff here in LA.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'll be good. There aren't many Bigfoots in LA, but at some point when this
you don't know that.
Over, I mean, I don't. There are big mountains.
Yeah, Los Angeles National Forest.
Nearby.
Where is this? It's pretty. Like nobody in LA goes to the woods. They just don't. It's actually some of the most pristine, untouched wilderness in the nation. Next to 14 million people,
there could be.
There very well could be.
Up here in the Pacific Northwest, I mean, that's where we hear about the sightings and all this stuff. There's Bigfoot lore.
I do have a pilot. If anyone wants to do, I pitch a pilot called it's Diddley Squatch. But it's scripted. Yeah, Diddley Squatch. It has a spin-off called Marge the Manatee with Massive Mammaries. She's a manatee that runs the largest seaweed dispensary off the coast of Florida. So, that's what I'm doing with my life. Sorry, Mom. Sorry.
Oh, it's a wonderful life.
But yeah, the Bigfoot's in Los Angeles. There is a Bigfoot Lodge, I believe, in Atwater Village. Is it Atwater Village? Yeah.
Possibly. I don't know. But let's keep this show going. I love finding out about all your goings-ons and things you're just doings. The monkeying around and the serious. Let's try and do some good science communication.
Let's do more
entertainment. Yeah. Okay, so it's time for me to say it's time for Justin to tell a story. I don't need to do any stories anymore. Justin, it's your turn.
Okay, so this one's just going to hit point blank. Christian nationalists, it turns out, are less likely to get the COVID-19 vaccine. Yeah, well, political conservatives in general express high skepticism towards coronavirus or science in general. There are two separate studies published by the same group in West Virginia University of Sociology. The belief that Christianity should permeate American civil life is one of the strongest predictors of COVID-19 vaccine hesitancy, and is negatively associated with having received or planning to get the vaccine. This is quoting Katie Corcoran, Associate Professor of Sociology and lead author of the report. It's the belief that Americans are chosen by God and that God protects them. They tend not to trust science and are against government intervention, so they're more focused on individual freedoms than public health protections. It's hypothesized that those are the reasons that Christian nationalists are less likely to receive the vaccine and are more likely to not trust it. Which is interesting because I was talking to Kiki, I think it was a week ago or 2 weeks ago, maybe, where I was saying, it's not the people out there. who the politicians are pandering to. It's the politicians who have created this thing for them to get behind. But I think I was wrong. According to this research, there's a group that has ingrained in them an opposition to vaccine because it's connected to science and connected to government that has nothing to do with what was presented to them as much as a group realizing, hey, we have an audience who wants to hear this. And so I totally correct what I think you're right. The flow is a pandering and not a conspiring.
It's not necessarily a conspiring, but a pandering. But the an interesting point from the communications side of this is I've done some research people have done and have been trying to get the word out about is that when talking with people who are very Christian and have these beliefs that they hold very strictly to, and they believe that God should be the ruling all of our lives in the country, that coming to them with conversations about not necessarily because the government wants you to get vaccinated, because the vaccine's going to protect you, or any of these kinds of messages, that's not going to help, because they go, oh, well, if God thinks I should die, I'm going to die. If I'm going to get sick, I'm going to get sick. It's all God's will. So you don't talk about them as individuals, but talk about how God would ask them to be good neighbors, and to love thy neighbor, and to actually have conversations about you can get vaccinated so you can help your neighbors
or help yourself because there's a whole story that the flood, the guy has to go up on the roof and then a raft comes by and he goes, I'm waiting for God will save me. And then another raft comes by and he goes, don't worry, God will protect me. And so that raft leaves. And then so he's sitting on there on the roof and he's he's dehydrated. He's been up there 3 days. He's beginning to die. God, why have you forsaken me? And then God speaks in a clear, godly voice. I sent 2 rafts. Why didn't you get on them? Hey. So, because God is Jewish. Everybody knows that, right?
Yeah.
But they further on the second part of this study was they looked at conservatives and their relationship to science, and basically found that you could correlate their skepticism to COVID-19 to thoughts about evolution, climate change, that sort of thing. It was all sort of mirrored. There was one thing, though, that I thought was interesting, which was that the only issue that was regionally specific, the topic of evolution, was the only science topic with a regional pattern. They found that individuals residing in the South were more likely to view evolution with skepticism, as were people that had, lower levels of education. But specifically in the South. So one of the things, it was in the disclaimer of today's show. I think part of it is, if you haven't gone to college, it's not that there's this trope that people get indoctrinated at higher levels of education into more liberal thinking about things like science. But really what's taking place is they get laid out before them all of the conversations, all of the discoveries, all the things that went on, all the knowledge of the past that led up to the knowledge of today. And if you don't have any of that, of course you're going to come to ill conclusions. Of course you're going to make bad choices. Of course you're going to not be able to take a new situation and put it in context with all of history and civilization and science that's come before, because you won't understand how it got here. You won't understand that these aren't the first waves of even a pandemic that humanity has had to face if you just haven't been exposed to that conversation. So don't blame people for being ignorant. Just understand why they are. And maybe somewhere
where people are coming from. Yeah.
Maybe there's somewhere we can start to bridge that gap.
Yeah.
But,
yeah. No, I'm a big believer of snark does not win anybody over. You know what I mean?
No.
Like,
No, but it feels good, doesn't it?
It
Doesn't it feel good? It feels really good to be snarky. Oh, gosh, I like it. Oh, I enjoy that. Sometimes more than doing good.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and it's tough because I mean, like, I know that for me, I know that I work with John Fugelsang, who's a very, very progressive comic. And I used to co-host his, we used to get into like little punch ups on his show. Not anything serious, but like, cause I'd co-host the show and I had some pretty strong beliefs in people who like had voted for 45. And I was just like, I don't believe the intentions are good. And he was like, oh no, there's some good, and it was just trying to like really understand the motivation and why, people think the ways they do and ask them. And it gets uncomfortable sometimes because you got to ask them questions like, like why do you not want this? And kind of like, it's like the question game to get to the point of now get inside rather than like coming in and going, okay, this is why you should do it, rather than asking them, why are you afraid? Or why are you hesitant? How can I, is there anything I can do to help? But it's tough to have these kind of conversations on Twitter when you're limited to how many characters and people like to yell at each other behind a keyboard. So it's this.
Oh, people love yelling on Twitter. It's like you say something and people read into it. You're like, I didn't mean it that way, but suddenly it's created this massive thing.
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah, but you're absolutely right. It's we have to put our own wants and our own ideas about what's right and what we want aside and just listen. Start asking questions and listen, because it's just not going to work otherwise.
Yeah. Sometimes they answer their own question.
It's true.
Let them think they came to that conclusion.
Oh,
yes.
Is it time now for?
Is it time for some good news? Do you have
Just
some
good news? The segment that explains itself in its title. It's Just Good News, Climate Mitigation Edition. Current climate change is causing temperatures to rise and is also increasing the likelihood of storms, heavy rain, and flooding. Professor Philip Poj von Strandman of Johannes Gutenberg University in Germany asked an important and very timely question. How quickly can the climate recover from the warming caused by an increase in carbon dioxide in the atmosphere? His team looked at the Paleocene-Eocene thermal maximum. This was a significant rise in global temperatures, 5 to 8 degrees Celsius, which, if you're not familiar with Celsius, you got to do math, and you get even more, or so maybe it's less. It's a different number in Fahrenheit, but it's enough. That's like some heat. Took place 56 million years ago, the fastest natural period of global warming that has ever impacted our planet's climate, while life was on it at least. By studying rock formations of this age, they found that they underwent a significant increased weathering. According to the research, if there's a lot of CO2 in the atmosphere, some of it then reacts with water, forming carbonic acid. This acid promotes and accelerates the weathering process in rocks. Because the weathering process, the atmospheric carbon will then eventually find its way into the seas via rivers, where it binds CO2 as carbonate and form a persistent ocean-based reservoir of carbon. Has to do with, there's a couple types of lithium 6 versus lithium 7. The clay, I think, takes up the lithium 6 at the bottom of the sea. So so it basically stores it. It creates a big carbon sink for it. And when they looked at some of these ancient rocks, what they found was sometimes a doubling or even a tripling of the amount of weathering that was going on the rocks, and accelerating that process through increased weather activity and erosion activities. And we ended up with a huge reservoir of carbon dioxide in the ocean that was sinking it, therefore revitalizing, lowering the amount of carbon in the atmosphere. As a result of that increased rock weathering, climate stabilized, and it only took between 20 and 50,000 years for that to happen. So it's good news to know the Earth's climate will surely recover one day, and in a time frame that humans should find somewhat reassuring. Future humans, if we're still here,
if we
will find
make it
very
that long. Yeah.
convenient that they didn't. But then they're going to be like, oh gosh, it's getting too cold. It's getting too cold to live in the Arctic now. What are we going to do?
I don't know. I just think, the future humans living in our caves underground because we can't weather
It's
the
more
surface
thermally
anymore.
stable. Yeah.
Yeah.
More thermally stable underground.
20,000 to 50,000 years. Is this good news, Justin?
Yes, because I think the alternative to not knowing that would be we could be Venus.
Right. It
So
can recover.
I think it's
Ouch.
good news.
Yeah.
It's not just a runaway that goes from global warming, climate change, chlamydia, straight to Venus. Yeah,
Right.
good news.
Although I've heard Venus has always been like Venus. There was a study out recently suggesting the Venus has always been too hot for life.
Too hot
New
to
idea.
handle.
Too
Oh,
hot,
yeah.
too hot for life to handle, for sure.
Huh. I mean, I always joke that, conservation, it's a very selfish endeavor because the earth is going to be fine. There's no saving the earth. It's fine.
Yep.
It's going to be great. It'll be great. Once we're gone, it's going to be like, party. Yeah.
It's all the life on the planet that we have to worry about. And so I think people forget about that. Yeah. Planet's fine.
Yeah.
Well, there's always going to be those little microbes that don't need oxygen, the archaebacteria, that they're going to survive in a crevice somewhere. And,
It's going to be a tardy
find out.
party. It's going to be a bunch
Yeah,
of
it will.
tardigrades. Just like
Tardigrades.
tardigrade party. Just hanging out.
All the
Them
humans are gone.
Right.
Woo,
All the
woo,
cockroaches
woo.
and tardigrades and possum, all the things that can survive, massive extinction events.
Oh, that's a party I want to go to.
I want to
Darn
go to. Maybe throw in a cephalopod. I'm in.
All right, we are running down to the end of the show. I have 3 more stories to get through very quickly. Story number 1. Some machine learning computer science people decided to make a neural network of the olfactory system.
Oh, wow.
And basically try and design the neural network and design it just like the olfactory system is designed to kind of see if the olfactory system we have makes sense, if it's an efficient system. And so they looked at the fruit fly olfactory system because it's small, it's tidy, and it's very well described. So we know that it has been very well mapped. It has 3 different layers, and these different layers have very specific numbers of neurons and specific ways that they connect with each other, and that information flows through to allow fruit flies to identify odors. So these researchers said, hey, let's put this all together, and they created a model of this fruit fly olfactory nervous system, and then told it to organize itself using artificial learning and machine learning techniques. They basically said, we want you to end up smelling things. So we're going to give you a little input, you put it together, and then figure out how these 3 layers should be organized. And the artificial network organized the connections between the 3 different layers that it had been given by the researchers. And when it came out in the end, it looked exactly like the fruit fly olfactory system. The artificial system arranged itself exactly the way that nature arranged the fruit flies system. They say that in one particular level, one layer called the expansion layer, each neuron receives about, on average, 6 compression layer neurons. And that's exactly what happened in this artificial network. The exact average number of connections from one layer to another. And the researchers are quoted as saying, it could have been 1, it could have been 50, it could have been anywhere in between. Biology finds 6, and our network finds about 6 as well.
That's crazy.
Yeah, this was created through machine learning algorithms.
That
Good
doesn't
model.
stink.
It doesn't.
That I don't know. I mean, yeah. And fruit flies are really interesting because I used to always joke around and say that I had the alcohol tolerance of a fruit fly, not realizing that fruit flies have ridiculously high alcohol tolerances because they eat fruit, rotting fruit. That's all they eat is ethanol.
They're flying around, not stumbling around.
I'm
No.
so surprised and so shocked and impressed. No, that's really cool.
Yeah, I thought.
So
I
if
thought
I
it was
was
really
an
neat.
alien, if I was an alien,
Go on.
I would say, so Earthlings created an artificial intelligence to see how other Earthlings, would develop, to model, and then they came up with it just seems like too in-house. The information is being given by Earthlings about Earthlings on an Earthling process.
It is, but
I
because
think
the
there's
Earthlings
probably
are trying to the Earthlings are trying to understand things, and the Earthlings have decided that the fruit fly olfactory system is optimally adapted to its purpose.
Sure. But I just still feel like if there was an alien logic, it could have come up with a better solution.
I feel like the human nose would just be like, how can we find pizza? It would just be like, how do we sniff out, like, ignore Dracar Noir and find pizza? I mean, I don't, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
Let's never mind that Axe body spray.
Oh,
It's
God.
pizza.
Yeah, please.
If I could tell my olfactory system to just ignore some smells, that would be great.
Yeah.
But we don't want to do that. Smells tell us so much about our world. Okay, but let's talk about lady brains for a minute. Ladies. We have the brains that change through our lives as we get older. Changing hormone levels impact our activity levels, so whether or not we're more sedentary. A lot of women, as they age, become more sedentary. They become less interested in sexual reproduction. And the activities that go along with that process. There's a whole bunch of changes that happen. And so researchers at UC San Francisco have been trying to figure out what goes on during the different phases of female cycles to change activity levels. And one of the things that happens also right before females ovulate, activity levels increase. And these researchers are like, is there a neural circuit behind this that can explain this increase in activity, the change in activity that would lead to a drive to move around your environment, potentially interacting with reproductive partners right before you ovulate. So this is a great behavior for reproduction, but what's the mechanism? How does it happen? These researchers at UCSF say that they have identified a neural circuit that becomes active. It is impacted by estrogen levels. And when the estrogen gets into the brain, what it does, it interacts with the estrogen receptor alpha. It activates a gene with the estrogen receptor. It's called MC4R. MC4R then produces receptors that are on the surface of these estrogen-sensitive neurons in an area of the brain called the ventrolateral ventromedial hypothalamic nucleus. And it's this nucleus with these estrogen-receiving neurons that regulates energy in all adult females. They put together a map of where proteins attach in various parts, and they use this article is really awesome because it really got into some acronyms that were used by these researchers, not just the techniques, but the acronyms. One is cut and run, also known as cleavage under targets and release using nuclease. Anyway, they use this to identify sites where this estrogen receptor binding happens and show that there's a link between the receptor and the gene. And then they found that these ventrolateral ventromedial hypothalamus neurons also connect to speed cells in the hippocampus. They are cells within the mouse brain. They weren't looking at human females here. Oops, did I not say this is all in mice?
Oh.
In mice. But they think that this is applicable to all mammals because they think it's a very important process. I think that's going too far, but we'll see. But these cells in the mouse brain control how fast the mouse moves. So when the circuit gets activated through the ventrolateral ventromedial hypothalamus, then it tells the hippocampus, boom, boom, speed up. And the mouse activates. And so they turned up this circuit and turned down this circuit, and they were able to make male and female mice more active or less active based on how they affected the ability of estrogen to be able to connect with all of these neurons in this circuit. And in the process, this is another great acronym. They have a system that's the designer receptors exclusively activated by designer drugs technique. It's
What?
a chemogenetic technique called DREADS. The acronym is DREADS. Designer receptors
Wow.
exclusively activated by designer drugs. There is a drug called bremelanotide, and it's also known as Vyleesi, and it treats a condition of hypoactive sexual desire. They were able to use this drug to impact the ventrolateral ventromedial hypothalamus and all of the activation of the mice. They caused mice to lose sedentary mice who didn't want to move around. They made them active and made them lose 10% of their body weight in 24 hours of administrating this drug because they were moving around so much.
Were they dancing?
Yeah, they were dancing. No, they were active. I bet if they had an activity wheel, little running wheel in their little mouse cages, they're just spinning that thing. But the instance of dread reversed diet-induced obesity and estrogen depletion and sedentary activity. So these mice were slimming down, their metabolic health was better. And so the researchers are looking at all of this and they're like, okay, so this dread stimulation, that can work, but can we do this within people? And how does estrogen, now that we know that there's this circuit, how can we potentially use it? As opposed to just estrogen replacement therapy for women who are going through menopause, how can we actually specifically target cells within the brain, in the ventrolateral ventromedial hypothalamus, or even these speed cells in the hippocampus, or other parts of the circuit to be able to help women live more dynamic, vibrant lives, and not just get tired. And we want to be dancing and running on our wheels. I want to run on my wheel as I get older. Maybe. No, I don't know. But so ladies, when
all the
estrogen-
ladies.
all the ladies, when the estrogen is in the house, ladies, you're gonna be dancing like a mouse, ladies. Yeah.
Mice don't go through menopause, do they? Like us, aren't they
No.
reproductive pretty much till the end? Humans
Yeah.
are unique in the fact that we have the whole grandmother hypothesis.
Right.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing that's so interesting is that's why I do wonder, when I know that there has been studies showing that a woman's libido will get decrease over time, but I sometimes wonder if it's just she's just annoyed. You know what I mean?
Men just get less attractive. That's all it really is.
But I think that women do have. I mean, I think women. I think that's kind of a false message and a false narrative that women don't have libidos far past their, once they reach menopause. I just think it's maybe not reported on correctly, or
Sleep is coming for so many of us. Maybe not those of us who are in more European early morning time zones at this point in time. The sleep is coming, but there's a study that found that sleeping is good for reactivating your memories. We've talked, so much.
Yeah.
Everyone's like, sleep on it. It'll help, right?
It does.
But not just your memories about things, it also improves your motor skills. Potentially. It's a study out in the Journal of Neuroscience. Researchers at Northwestern University wanted to know how sleep would help their volunteers that perform a challenging motor task and the learning of that task. They had individuals with basically a little muscular stimulation and musculoskeletal recording device that was attached to their arms. This myoelectric computer interface enabled them to use their arm muscles to control a cursor on a sound cue. So it was this cursor on a computer, and at the sound of a beep, they would have to do some kind of movement with the cursor. They had the learning segment in which the sound would go, and they had to engage their arm muscles to make the cursor move. And then they got to take a 90-minute nap. While they were napping, the researchers played this sound cue to them to hopefully reinforce the brain kind of getting those memories in there. And then they found afterwards, after the nap, that those volunteers who had the sound played while they napped did better than individuals who did not have the sound playing while they were napping. Their performance was faster. It was more accurate. Yeah. And they didn't have as many kind of extra movements. It was more efficient. Yeah. Faster, accurate, efficient. So sleep training with,
that's really interesting.
With audio cues.
Yeah.
Can help with motor skills.
That's, wow. Cool. Okay.
Yeah. So we thought about, you fall asleep while listening to that audiobook or, the next great lecture series or whatever it is. But
or this show.
Or maybe you practice a piano sonata and then you go to sleep listening to that piano sonata. I don't know. Maybe there are things that can help with some things, but what they're hoping is really they'll be able to help in rehabilitation for stroke or other neurological disorders as people try and regain muscle control.
Wow.
Yeah. We should all just sleep on this right now, I think.
Yeah. I feel like this is because I tried the whole thing where you just put the textbook under the pillow. That does not work.
It doesn't.
That's a myth.
It's also a very hard pillow.
Yeah.
It's that osmosis from the text in the pages through the pillow is apparently too much of a barrier.
Yeah.
But the idea of listening to the audio of the textbook while sleeping and then waking with some knowledge is maybe then
I dreamed of something.
To sleep, a chance to dream. Yeah, I feel like that would be a great job, like a side hustle. Like, hey, you just send me your notes and I'm going to read them to you in like whatever accent you want, whatever weird impersonation voice, and that's how you, like, especially if it brings back triggers some sort of memory. Like I was a really big fan of, I don't know, Steve Irwin or, I don't know, David Attenborough or, I don't know, Gilda Radner, whoever.
Attenborough.
Fran Drescher.
I can sleep too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Have we done it? Have we come to the end of our episode?
Woo!
We made it.
Yeah.
I think we did it. I think we've done it, everyone. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us for another over an hour, almost 2 hours. I hope you all enjoyed the show. Natalia, where can people find you?
Hiding under a rock. I am on Twitter. Exactly. I'm on Twitter and Instagram at Natalia13Reagan. TikTok, if you're into that kind of thing, I'm at Behold Natalia. And if you want to watch or listen to a podcast I've done with Star Talk, I do a lot of anthropology themed topics on Star Talk All-Star Podcasts. And if you want to take a biological anthropology class, find me at Lehman College.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us on the show tonight.
I had so much fun. Thank you.
It's been a lot of fun. It's been a lot of fun. Yeah. I hope you can come back again sometime.
I would like that.
That would be great. But in the meantime, it's time for shout outs, everyone. Shouting out to Fada. Thank you so much for your help on show notes and on show descriptions. Thank you to Gord and Arnlor and all the people who help to keep our chat rooms moderated and moderate in all the things so that we're all happy and helpful and science-y in the chat rooms. Identity 4, thank you for recording the show. Thank you so much for catching that recording from earlier today as well. That was a big one. And Rachel, thank you for your amazing assistance in so many ways. Finally, I would like to thank our Patreon sponsors. Thank you to Kent Northcote, Rick Loveman, Pierre Velazar, Ralphie Figueroa, John Ratnaswamy, Carl Kornfeld, Karen Tazi, Woody M.S. Embrace, Andre Bissett, Chris Wozniak, Dave Bunn, Vigard Shefstad, Hal Snyder, Jonathan Stiles, a.k.a. Don Stylo, John Lee, Ali Coffin, Maddie Perrin, Gaurav Sharma, Shu Brew, Don Mundis, Stephen Alberon, Daryl Myshak, Stu Pollock, Andrew Swanson, Fredas 104, Sky Luke, Paul Ronovich, Kevin Bearden, Noodles Jack, Brian Carrington, Matt Bass, Shauna Nina Lamb, John McKee, Greg Riley, McKesson Flo, Gene Tellier, Steve Leisman, a.k.a. Zima, Ken Hayes, Howard Tan, Christopher Rappin, Dana Pearson, Richard Brendan Minish, Johnny Gridley, Kevin Railsback, Rami Day, Flying Out, Christopher Dreyer, RDM, Greg Briggs, John Atwood, Hey Arizona, support Aaron Lieberman for governor, Rudy Garcia, Dave Wilkinson, Rodney Lewis, Paul Mallory Sutter, Philip Shane, Kurt Larson, Craig Landon, Mountain Sloth, Jim Drapeau, Sarah Chavez, Sudoster, Jason Olds, Dave Neighbor, Eric Knapp, E.O., Kevin Parachan, Aaron Luthen, Steve DeBell, Bob Calder, Marjorie, Paul Disney, David Simmerly, Patrick Pecorar, Tony Steele, Ulysses Adkins, and Jason Roberts. Yay! Thank you for all of your support on Patreon. And if you would like to support us on Patreon, please head over to TWIS.org. On next week's show,
we will be back Wednesday at 8 p.m. Pacific Time, broadcasting live from our YouTube and Facebook channels, as well as TWIS.org/live.
Want to listen to us as a podcast? Just search for This Week in Science wherever podcasts are found. If you enjoyed the show, get your friends to subscribe too.
For more information on anything you've heard here today, show notes and links to stories will be available on our website, www.twis.org. And you can also sign up for a newsletter.
Ooh, you can also contact us directly. Email Kirsten at thisweekinscience.com, Justin at twisminion@gmail.com, or Blair at blairbaz@twis.org. Just put TWIS in the subject line so your email doesn't get spam filtered into oblivion.
You can also hit us up on the Twitter, where we are at TWIScience, at Dr. Kiki, at Jacksonfly, and at Blair's Menagerie. We love your feedback. If there's a topic you would like us to cover or address, a suggestion for an interview, a haiku that comes to you in the night, please let us know.
We will be back here next week, and we hope you'll join us again for more great science news.
And if you've learned anything from the show, remember,
it's all in your head.
This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science, it's the end of the world. So I'm setting up shop, got my banner unfurled. It says the scientist is in, I'm gonna sell my advice. Show them how to stop the robots with a simple device. I'll reverse global warming with a wave of my hand. And all it'll cost you is a couple of grand. 'Cause this week's science is coming your way. So everybody listen to what I say. I use the scientific method for all that it's worth. And I'll broadcast my opinion all over the earth. 'Cause it's This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science. 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 This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This